Huh? Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back, because today I'm going to give you guys my review for a new movie from Francis Ford Coppola that he's been trying to get made for decades, and just a month ago, he has finally been able to release this movie publicly to the world. Megalopolis, starring Adam Driver, Giancarlo Esposito, Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, Nathalie Emmanuel, and more. Let me know down below in the comments, what are your thoughts on Megalopolis? I would love to know that, and with that said, let's get started. Megalopolis follows Cesar, a genius artist who seeks to build a utopian future for New Rome with a new city known as Megalopolis, as he faces conflicts and opposition from Mayor Franklyn Cicero, who remains committed to keep the city exactly as is, while also dealing with conflicts from other characters that deal with political conflicts, greed, special interest, warfare, and so much more. Francis Ford Coppola is without a doubt one of the most popular and iconic film directors of all time, making movies like The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Rumblefish, The Outsiders, and more. He has solidified himself as one of the most iconic filmmakers who have ever walked the earth. And this is his first movie in a very long time. This is a passion project for him, trying to get this movie made as far back as the early 80s. And it hasn't been able to get made until now. He spent a lot of his own money working on it, has brought in a cast like this to get it made. And in the year 2024, Francis Ford Coppola has finally been able to reveal his vision with Megalopolis to the rest of the world after all of these years. But was it worth the wait?
Thank God, finally. What the
I thought Megalopolis was a mixed bag. There's undeniably things to praise about it. It is very unique. It has a lot of ideas on its mind, but it is also a movie where I struggled to connect with the characters and story at play, and in the end left me feeling very underwhelmed. This is a very bizarre movie to talk about. Within the first day after watching it, I was perplexed by what I had seen in theaters. This might be the most weirdest movie I've ever seen in a theater.
And I'm sitting there like going, what?
And at times I couldn't even tell if I walked out liking this movie or if I flat out did not like it. It is just very much split down the middle with how I feel about Megalopolis. And in some regards, I do like the ambition. It is a very ambitious movie that does not feel like it could have been made by anybody else. It is very clearly a movie made by Francis Ford Coppola that has a very unique style that couldn't have been replicated by anybody else, and I can see the comparisons of this being like the closest we'll get to late period George Lucas if he still made movies. And I can see the resemblance there. It is very much a visual movie that relies a lot on its style, and at times to a fault, because I did feel like this movie felt very style over substance to me, but there is a lot of style. There is a lot of things from a camera work, effects work, put on display here. One involving statues I think was amazing. One with both Adam Driver's character and Nathalie Emmanuel's character on a rooftop I think is gorgeous, and some of the visual effects is best work in this movie. And it also has a lot of themes about building a better future for future generations and pushing things into a new age and getting out of the status quo. And so as greed, politics, conflict, there's a lot of that in here. It very much has some ties to the Catalanarian conspiracy with Julius Caesar, and it does show on display here. And I do think it was pretty cool how Coppola was able to take all the stuff we knew about Rome, but implement it into the 21st century, but it's in New York City. And at times it does feel like it's just New York City, but titled New Rome. And it's an ambitious movie that swings for the fences, and I got to give it some respectability points for that. I can commend the effort. It is very ambitious, and it doesn't hold back on the ideas at play, sometimes too much to its own good.
Boner.
But it does feel like a movie that's very one of a kind, where you can see many movies in theaters that are feeling very similar to one another. This movie feels very one of a kind. And so even though I don't feel very crazy strong about this movie, it does feel like a movie of, yeah, this exists, and it's interesting that this exists, and I commend it for that, despite a lot of the faults that Megalopolis has. The performances in this movie are very hit or miss for me. I love a lot of the actors here. I love Adam Driver. I thought he was pretty good in this role. He, at times, is able to just get weird, but also is playing it straight at points too. So I thought he's pretty good in this. Not quite my favorite Adam Driver performance from him, but I thought for the most part he's pretty solid in this.
Oh, not nothing, but I reserve my time for people who can think about science and literature and architecture and art. You find me cruel, selfish, and unfeeling? I am. I work without caring what happens to either of us. So go back to the club, bear it all, and stalk the kind of people that you enjoy.
Fine.
Giancarlo Esposito and Laurence Fishburne are by far the biggest standouts for me. I really liked both of them in this movie, especially Giancarlo Esposito. And Aubrey Plaza is someone I've also really liked, but her role in this movie and the way her character is written and performed is very strange to me. At times it feels like she is in a X-rated movie, and I am not holding back when I say this.
What the?
There are scenes in this movie with her character where I can see the intent, but the way it tonally clashes with everything else just feels so strange to me, and it feels like I was watching a totally different movie unfold than the one that the movie was starting itself as. And I could not really tell you what Shia LaBeouf was doing in this movie. Every time he's on screen, I just could not care. Both performance-wise, didn't care for him, but also character-wise, I just don't know what that was all about.
Wait, what? What am I looking at? What is that?
And even Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman and Jason Schwartzman, some of them aren't in this movie as much as I thought they were going to be, which is a little disappointing. And even the roles they had, it's the kind of movie where I'm like, I can see the intention and what they wanted to do with these characters. I don't think the execution was really there for me to really feel like it did anything of lasting impact. So it had a lot of scenes that to me felt like they lacked weight, lacked substance, and because of this movie having such a big tonal clash with one another, of being a movie about a new city being built, while also bringing in a lot of elements like Megalon, which is involved with Cesar, versus the conflicts between some of the side characters and what they plan on doing. It is a movie that just goes back and forth between so many things, and there are ways you can do this well, but I don't feel like Megalopolis truly succeeded at that for me. And the best way I can describe it is that it is a 2.5 hour mess. But in a way that it's being interesting about it, where it is a messy movie to so many faults. At times I struggled to really tell what was going on in this movie when I first watched it right off the bat, which is why I've waited this long to review it. But it at least couldn't have me look away from the screen, I guess, which is something I can say about it.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, visually, I thought for the most part, it's pretty hit or miss. Some visual effects are gorgeous, especially one revolving around the state of mind that Cesar is going through after a big leak was exposed. One with his character and Nathalie Emmanuel's character on a rooftop. There's some gorgeous scenes in that regard. And so as those in the back half of the movie and some that involve statues. I think there are some really good visual effects work in here. But at the same time, there are visual effects in this movie that look very cheap. So it hinges on the balance of being a movie that looks really great and a movie that looks downright terrible. It's very much in between in that regard. And that's what really stood out to me as one of the biggest things about Megalopolis after having seen it. I think Megalopolis had a pretty solid first half of the movie to where I wasn't loving it, but I was pretty intrigued by the start of this movie with how it opens, where it kicks off with the conflicts between Cesar and Mayor Cicero, and how some of the side characters were being implemented. It had a pretty decent first half to where I was pretty on board with what they were doing. But then as we got halfway through the movie and closer to the end, it just got so all over the place and so complicated that this is one of the most confusing movies I've seen all year, to the point where I understood the intention and what some of these stories were about, but it just felt like the movie lost its own identity and it just became very messy, but not in a good way. And that really soured me a little bit because I was initially really excited for this movie, and then I wasn't really loving the marketing of how this was being promoted or some of the trailers that they've shown for this. And so I feel pretty disappointed that for a movie from Coppola, after all these years, I didn't love this one. But It is a movie that at times felt like it is the exact runtime that it is told to be, but then at times it felt a lot longer than what it actually was. So the pacing was all over the place. The movie just kind of took a nosedive in the back half of the movie, and it's carried by scenes that I found to be utterly hilarious, and I mean that 100%. I unfortunately found the characters and overall execution of the story to be pretty disappointing. I failed to latch onto the characters and what this was going for. So for 2.5 hours, despite having some intriguing ideas for the start of this movie, it just felt like a movie that tries really, really hard to hammer in its points, but it feels very surface level about it, where the conversations I've had about this movie were a lot more interesting than the actual movie itself. And I just feel like the characters felt very shallow to me. I didn't really care for anybody or what their goal was, or even if inherently I can see the point behind the characters' decisions, I just didn't feel like there was any connection for me to really have an investment so deep to be like satisfied by the end or feel however Coppola wanted me to feel by the end of it. So this to me felt like a very style over substance movie where it has a lot of ideas, takes a lot of bold swings that I commend, and it has some scenes that I do really, really enjoy, and at times it is an enjoyable movie. But in the end, I just did not care for the characters, didn't care for the story, felt like the performances were all over the place. And it is a movie that had so much on its mind, but couldn't really narrow it down on one specific thing it wanted to be about, to the point where by the end, I didn't mind the ending, but it didn't really move me. It just left me feeling very empty. So overall, this is a mixed bag of a movie that I would recommend just to see what it is for yourself. It is a movie you have to experience, but I don't know if this is a movie that's going to really stick with me in the long run. So in the end, I'm going to give Megalopolis a C. After watching this movie, I can totally see why some people would take the advice that Adam Driver's character gives them.
So go back to the club.
So yeah, that's my review for Megalopolis. What are your thoughts on the movie? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Stay tuned for some upcoming videos I have planned soon. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go down while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more.